1.
I'd thought that I'd wanted to go to Pallet Town, but I ended up passing over it without a second thought. I didn't bother to check how far behind me Nakira was, but he seemed far. He was probably still near where Ho-Oh had fallen. Not too long after I'd passed Pallet Town, I reached a small wooded ridge right next to a stream. There was a trailer and several tents set up by an old, fallen-apart entrance to Pokemopolis. I guess it made sense that I ended up there. I saw Eve and her team working by the ruin. They'll just get in the way. It's best to take care of them now and get it over with. I floated down just low enough for me to get a good look at them without having them notice me. I did a quick head count. Eve was in a tent with another archaeologist. 3 more were by the entrance. There had to be 1 more inside the temple. I blasted all of them with a strong wind, knocking them out, then pulled the last one out and dealt him a quick blow to the head. I sent them a safe distance from the city, then went in by myself. I knew that it should have been dark in there, but it seemed like something was lighting it up for me. I still didn't know whether I was the source of the light, or if it was the walls of the city itself. The first corridor was rather dark, but as I got deeper, it seemed to get lighter instead of darker. After a while, I emerged into a huge open space, filled with tall buildings and paved streets. It was also mostly destroyed, and rubble varying in size of pebbles to huge boulders littered the area. As I stared at my surroundings, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had finally arrived where I needed to be, that I had found a palace where I belonged. This rubbish is pathetic. This city must have been beautiful when it was young. I can't believe it could have fallen into such a state. I could feel an anger growing inside of me. This was the home of my ancestors. It must have been. I glowered at the crumbling city. I will restore it to its former glory. I let my mind slip away and let my instincts take over. Rocks burst into dust, the ground shook, and the ceiling of stone gave way to an open sky. And in the center of it all, a tower rose. A tower that I was certain had never existed before, not even during ancient times. It rose higher and higher until it seemed that it would touch the clouds. Still listening to my instincts, I floated up to the top of the tower and took my seat as a stone chair formed underneath me. I returned to myself with an overwhelming feeling of accomplishment. In only a matter of minutes, I had accomplished what must have taken the Pokemopolitans years to create, and I had done more, and there was much more to come. I don't know why I did what I did. It was like an unknown force was driving me. The disease. I guess they would have found me quickly anyway. After all, I did make a huge change to the landscape. I summoned everyone in the vicinity to the new Pokemopolis. I ordered them to. I forced them to. From my perch at the top of the tower, I could easily recognize all of them. With such a small hometown, it wasn't difficult. Then, of course, there were my friends that weren't from Pallet Town. I can still remember their names and faces, even though it's been such a long time. Mom, Brock, Billy, Misty, Richie, May, Pikachu, and even Gary. I guess he had just returned after training on his own for a while. Not that it really matters anymore. Oh yes, how could I forget Nakiro? Ash! Ash, what are you doing? Nothing that you can change. Ash, do you have any idea what you've done? I sighed. Nakiro, I'm busy. Could you do this another time? No! This is more important than anything, he said, his voice starting to crack. Oh, you... It doesn't matter. Now leave me alone. I can't do that. Nakiro took a deep breath and hovered directly in front of me. Ashura, I can't let you continue this. I took responsibility for you, and I'm going to do my duty. Gee, that sounds familiar, I sneered. You couldn't stop me before, and there's no way you're gonna stop me this time. Now move it. He looked into my eyes, and I could see that he was searching me for something, anything that could give him hope. Enough of this. I teleported him to a random room deep in the tower. I'll deal with him later. I turned my attention to the crowd below. They all seemed so innocent and confused. Pitiful. That kind of attitude is what makes people vulnerable. After a thought, I floated down to a low tier so they could see me. There was a general whispering among them, and I let it go. Most of the intelligent whispering came from near the front, where my friends were gathered. Ash!" I looked quickly to see the source of the all-too-familiar voice. Gary stared up at me. He seemed angry and frightened at the same time. All I could feel as I stared back was a slowly burning abhorrence. "That's you, isn't it? Aren't you Ash Ketchum?" He had to shout to be heard, but it felt like he was shouting at me. He didn't usually shout. Whenever he mocked me, he did it in an arrogant, sarcastic way. His shouting was almost unbearable. "Well, aren't you gonna answer me?" I jumped up in a burst of fury. Yes, it's me. I am Ash Ketchum." That really surprised everyone who hadn't known before, let me tell you that. Gary didn't lose his cool. At least he didn't lose any more than he already had. "What are you doing, Ash? Where did this city come from? Why did you bring us all here? Answer me!" "I brought you here because I'm planning on making some changes to the world, and I figured that if anyone deserved to find out first, it would be you guys." "Changes to the world?" Gary exclaimed. "That's impossible! Ash, are you out of your mind?" "Probably. Don't worry about it, Gary. There's nothing you can do to stop me." "We'll see about that!" He reached for his belt. I froze him in place before he could go any further. "Gary, don't even start. I don't have to hurt anybody if no one resists." He struggled against the light black haze surrounding him, and I let up just enough for him to speak. "Ash, think about what you're doing! This is crazy!" I let go of him, and he visibly sagged, but refused to fall. "You can't pull cities out of nowhere and then try to change the whole world. It doesn't work like that. And I'm not just going to suddenly start acting like you're some almighty ruler or something." "I don't think you get it, Gary. You don't have a choice in the matter." "We'll see about that. Go, Arcanine!" I stopped the Pokeball before it could even open and destroyed it. The red energy inside swirled around in the air, then dribbled to the ground and formed a pool around the shards of metal that once held it. A hush fell over everyone. Gary stood paralyzed, still in throwing position, his jaw unhinged and his eyes unmoving from the puddle of red that was slowly shrinking. "I told you not to fight me, Gary. That's an awful waste of a good Pokemon." He started to regain control of his mouth and whispered something even I could barely hear. "Argy." He moved so suddenly that I don't even think he knew what he was doing. In a flash, he was only a few feet away from me, and I was forced to react as suddenly as he had. It was only a brief flash of black before my eyes, and Gary stopped in his tracks. He stared at me with that look that I was starting to get used to. "Ash!" he gasped. "Why?" Then his eyes rolled back in his head, and he fell forward onto the ground. There were several scattered cries and gasps from the crowd. I looked out at them, and they quickly fell silent. I warned him, but he refused to listen. Listen to me now. Learn from his mistakes. Don't oppose me. There was a brief glow from near the back of the gathering. Within the few seconds that I had, I was able to identify a young girl and a psychic Pokemon, who had to be Mayo and Espeon. Before I could stop them, they had vanished. I started to say something about that, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw a small yellow form running at high speed. Pikachu! It didn't stop or slow down. If anything, Pikachu sped up when he heard me calling his name. "Come back here! You can't run!" When it was obvious that Pikachu wasn't stopping for anyone, I began to give chase. I floated within firing range. I took careful aim. Then I realized what an attack would do to Pikachu. Most likely the same thing it did to Gary. I glanced down again and saw that I had hesitated too long. Pikachu would easily get away if I didn't stop it right then and there. Without a second thought, I blasted down at it. When the dust cleared, there was a small, empty crater in the dirt. Another glance, and I saw a tiny yellow figure disappear over the horizon. I muttered a curse, then returned to the city. Their soft murmurings quickly fell when I got back. I glared out at all of them. They were scared, but they had a slight glimmering of hope. I had already let 3 people escape. They were going to try to leave also. I let a wave of darkness wash over all of them. Don't think for a second that will happen again. Those 3 got lucky. A thought came to me, and I snapped back at them. If any of you have any psychic Pokemon, pass them up to me right now, or else. No one sent me any Pokeballs, so I did a quick scan for psychic powers. There weren't any, except for Taper and Mimey. For a long moment, I regretted my words, but as I thought about the other choices I had, I knew what I had to do. I floated down so I was a few feet above her, and then I just hovered there, trying to figure out what to say. She just kept staring up at me, not with anger or fear, but with sadness and love. "Ash?" she asked softly, so softly. I broke myself out of my trance. Give me Mr. Mime," I said, my voice betraying how nervous I really was. "Tell me, Ash, what are you doing this for? Why did you kill Gary?" "It doesn't matter why," I snapped, finally pulling myself together. "Just give me Mr. Mime, and no one else has to get hurt." Mimey quavered. "I'm scared." "It's all right, Mimey," Mom whispered. "Ash isn't going to hurt us." "Please don't make me." I narrowed my eyes. "Come on, Mimey." She gave it a nod, and Mimey took a few hesitant steps towards me. "Taper 2, I ordered. She nodded shakily, then removed Taper's Pokeball from her belt and handed him to me. I turned and led Mimey to the tower, when I heard her call to me. "Ash!" I paused, then looked over at my shoulder. "You don't have to do this, Ash," she whispered. "That's like trying to stop the tide," I said quietly.